Hi, and welcome to English-Fabule. Are you learning English? Great. Let's learn English with a very interesting story. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Let's get started.
Imagine waking up on a Monday morning in Berlin. The year is 1939. From the window, the city looks busy like any other big city. People are going to work. Children are getting ready for school. Life seems normal for many. But Germany is different now. Adolf Hitler and his Nazi party control the country. This story shows what daily life was like for ordinary German people living under Nazi rule. We will follow a typical family. Walter is the father. He is a journalist and writes for a newspaper. His wife, Greta, is a housewife. She looks after their home and children. They have 2 teenage children. Hans is 16 years old and his sister Emma is 14. They live together in a small apartment in Berlin. Their morning might start like many families, with breakfast around the kitchen table. But under the surface of normal daily routines, there is fear. The Nazi party watches everything. They control jobs, schools, newspapers, and even the radio. People hear Nazi ideas everywhere. They must be very careful about what they say and do, even in their own homes. Saying the wrong thing can cause big problems. Walter feels this fear strongly. He worries about his job at the newspaper. Today, an important Nazi official is visiting his office. Walter is nervous because, years ago, before Hitler had full power, he wrote articles that criticized the Nazis. Now all newspapers must support the party. Walter hopes nobody remembers his old words. He fears his past could return and cause trouble for him and his family. Life in Germany changed very quickly after Hitler came to power in 1933. Freedoms disappeared. The government told people what to think and how to act. For Walter, Greta, Hans, and Emma, living day to day meant balancing normal family life with the strict rules and constant worry of the Nazi state. Their story helps us understand the pressures and fears people faced. 2. Family and home. In Nazi Germany, families had specific jobs. The Nazi party believed men and women had different roles. Men usually worked outside the home. They were expected to earn money for the family. Walter, the father in our story, works as a journalist. Women had a different job. Their main place was in the home. They looked after the house and raised the children. They were expected to teach their children Nazi values. They also had to support Nazi ideas. Many women, like Greta, had jobs before the Nazis came to power. Greta loved teaching, but the government wanted women to leave their jobs. This was partly to give work to unemployed men. Greta stopped teaching for the country. Sometimes she missed her job and wondered if she made the right choice. But life seemed better for her family now in some ways. The Nazis wanted German women to have many children. They believed large families made Germany strong. They wanted Aryan children who looked German in the way the Nazis liked. The Nazis believed these children would help build a bigger, stronger Germany. The government gave special awards to mothers with many children. One award was called the Mother's Cross. A woman could get this medal if she had at least 4 children. It showed she was a good German mother dedicated to the nation. Most families, like Walter and Greta's, lived in simple homes. They lived in a modest apartment in Berlin. It had 2 bedrooms. The children, Hans and Emma, shared one bedroom. Life at home was meant to follow Nazi rules too. It was clean and organized, but not large or fancy. The radio was very important in Nazi Germany. The government helped make cheap radios so many families could buy one. These radios brought the Nazi Party's messages right into people's homes. Families listened to German classical music, like Bach or Wagner, who was Hitler's favorite composer. But they also heard a lot of propaganda. There were long radio programs about Nazi ideas, the army's successes, and how great the Nazi Party was for Germany. Greta often listened to the radio while she worked in the kitchen. The sound of Nazi news and ideas filled their apartment every day. It was hard to escape the government's messages. So, even inside their own homes, families felt the control of the Nazi Party. The government decided the roles for men and women. They told women how to be good mothers. They filled homes with their ideas through the radio. Women often joined Nazi groups like Greta did to learn about health or cooking in ways the party approved. Children learned about Nazi beliefs not just at school, but also from the world around them at home. Family life was not private. It was shaped by the rules and expectations of the Nazi state. Parents like Walter and Greta had to raise their children in this world. 3. School and youth groups. School days in Nazi Germany were different. When children arrived, they often started the day shouting Heil Hitler. Lessons in school changed too. Teachers taught Nazi ideas. For example, children learned about race. They learned why the Nazis thought some people, like Jewish people, were different and dangerous. Some students had homework about the differences between a German person and a Jewish person. Even subjects like math sometimes included Nazi ideas. One math problem asked students to calculate the percentage of Jewish people in Germany. The lessons tried to make children believe Nazi ideas were right. Physical fitness was also very important in schools. Boys like Hans had many sports lessons each week, maybe 5 hours. They learned to be strong and healthy for Germany. Teachers had to follow the Nazi Party. Almost all teachers, about 97%, had to join a special group called the Nazi Teachers League. If they did not join, or if they taught things the Nazis did not like, they could lose their jobs. One literature teacher lost his job because he used books the Nazis did not approve of. A new teacher took his place after going to a special 1-month training course. He believed that all teaching must follow Nazi ideas. Teachers who were Jewish or who disagreed with the Nazis were not allowed to teach anymore. Outside of school, most young people had to join special groups. These were very important in Nazi Germany. For boys aged 10 to 18, there was the Hitler Youth. Hans was in the Hitler Youth. Boys did many activities there. They went camping, sang songs around the campfire, and played sports. They also did a lot of marching and learned about Nazi ideas. An important part of the Hitler Youth was preparing boys for the army. They did military training and sometimes learned to use weapons. The group wanted to make boys strong, tough, and ready to fight for Hitler and Germany. They learned to overcome fear. Girls had their own group called the League of German Girls. Emma was in this group. Girls learned different things. They learned how to be good mothers and housewives. They learned how to look after people, like doing first aid. They also did activities like sports and marching together. Emma practiced first aid and air raid drills with her group. Sometimes they prepared for special events, like marching in parades to celebrate something new. The group taught girls to be loyal to Hitler and to support the German nation. Both the Hitler Youth and the League of German Girls taught children that loyalty to Adolf Hitler was the most important thing. It was more important than loyalty to friends or even family. Children were sometimes encouraged to report if their parents said or did things against the Nazi Party. There was a lot of pressure to join these groups and follow the rules. If children did not join, their families could get into trouble, maybe paying a fine. If they made mistakes in the groups, like Hans did when he missed an activity, they faced punishment. These groups helped the Nazis control young people's lives and thoughts. 4. Work and free time. The Nazi Party promised jobs for everyone and a strong economy. Many people believed this promise because unemployment went down. Before the Nazis, many Germans did not have jobs. The government started big projects like building new highways called the Autobahn. These projects created work for people. Rearmament, making weapons and military equipment, also created many jobs. However, unemployment numbers looked better partly because Jewish people and many women were forced out of work. Life for workers changed a lot. Before joining the army, young men aged 19 to 25 had to do 6 months of public work. This was called the Reich Labor Service. They worked on farms or building projects. This service prepared them for hard work and military life. The Nazis wanted strong, obedient workers and soldiers. The Nazis also controlled workers in other ways. They banned trade unions. Unions help workers fight for better pay and conditions, but the Nazis did not want this. Instead, all workers had to join the German Labor Front. This organization controlled the workers for the government and business owners. Workers lost many rights, like the right to strike. It became very difficult to change jobs. You needed permission from your boss and a special workbook. This book showed your skills and where you worked before. If your boss did not want you to leave, they could keep your workbook. People who refused jobs or quit without permission could be called work-shy. These people, and others the Nazis called asocials, could be arrested and sent to concentration camps. Even free time was not really free. The Nazis wanted to control how people spent their time outside of work. They created a big organization called Strength Through Joy, or KDF. The KDF offered workers cheap holidays, like trips to the beach or mountains. People could go on cruises, see movies, attend concerts, or join sports clubs for very little money. These things were too expensive for most workers before. The KDF activities were popular, but they were also a way for the Nazis to spread their ideas and keep people loyal. Another big promise was the Volkswagen, the people's car. The plan was for every German family to save money and buy this cheap car. Many workers started paying money each week for their car. But the war started before most cars were built. Very few people actually received their Volkswagen before 1945, so the Nazi government organized work and free time. They wanted to control every part of people's lives. 5. Believing Nazi ideas. The Nazi government wanted everyone in Germany to think the same way. They used propaganda to make people believe their ideas. Propaganda is information, often false or one-sided, used to make people support a leader or government. A man named Joseph Goebbels was in charge of all propaganda in Nazi Germany. His job was to control everything people saw, heard, and read. Radio was very important. The Nazis made sure many families could buy cheap radios called people's radios. These radios were made so they could only receive German stations easily. Every day, these radios played Nazi messages, speeches by Hitler, and news that supported the government. Like Greta, many people listened to the radio at home. They heard a lot of German classical music because other types, especially foreign music like jazz, were not allowed. Listening to radio stations from other countries was forbidden and dangerous. Newspapers also had to follow strict rules. Walter worked for a newspaper, and he knew that papers could be closed down if they printed things the Nazis did not like. All articles had to support Nazi ideas. Books were checked too. Books with ideas the Nazis hated, especially those written by Jewish people or about democracy, were banned. Sometimes these books were burned in public. Teachers, writers, and artists had to join Nazi groups and promise to support Hitler. Films were another tool for propaganda. The government made movies that showed Nazi leaders as heroes and spread hate against groups like Jewish people. Big public meetings, called rallies, were organized. Thousands of people gathered to see parades, hear speeches, and feel part of a powerful movement. These events were designed to make people feel strong and united under Hitler. The Nazis tried to create a people's community, or Volksgemeinschaft. This was the idea that all true Germans were one big family. They should work together, support each other, and follow Hitler without question. Everyone was expected to fit in and share the same Nazi beliefs. There was no space for people who thought differently or criticized the government. This constant control of information made it hard for people to know the real truth. It shaped how many Germans understood their country and the world around them. 6. Groups not welcome. The Nazi government did not like everyone. Their ideas included hating certain groups of people. Life became very difficult and dangerous for these groups in Germany. Jewish people faced the worst problems. Step by step, the Nazis took away their rights. New laws, like the Nuremberg laws in 1935, stopped Jewish people from being full citizens. These laws said Jews could not marry non-Jewish Germans. They lost their jobs like teachers, professors, and government workers. Jewish businesses were taken away, or people were forced to sell them very cheaply. Violence against Jews grew. One terrible night in November 1938, called Kristallnacht or Crystal Night, Nazis attacked Jewish homes, shops, and synagogues. Many Jewish people were hurt or arrested. Many Jews tried to leave Germany, but it was very hard. Other countries often only accepted a small number of Jews. Also, the Nazis made them pay a very large tax if they wanted to leave the country, taking almost all their money. Jewish people were not the only ones the Nazis hated. The Roma people, also called gypsies, were treated as enemies too. The Nazis targeted homosexual men. They arrested many and sent them to camps. People with disabilities were also in danger. The Nazis believed these people made Germany weak. They started programs to stop them from having children using operations, called forced sterilization. They even killed many disabled people, including children, in secret programs called euthanasia. Jehovah's Witnesses faced problems because their religion meant they could not promise to follow Hitler completely or join the army. People who disagreed with the Nazis, like communists, socialists, or anyone who criticized the government, were also seen as enemies. Even people the Nazis called asocial, like homeless people or those they said were work-shy, were arrested and sent away. The Nazis used laws to control people and take away their rights. They used terrible programs like forced sterilization and euthanasia. They also built special prisons called concentration camps. Dachau near Munich was one of the first camps, opened in 1933. At first, it held mostly political prisoners, people who spoke against Hitler. Later, the Nazis sent Jews, Roma, homosexuals, Jehovah's Witnesses, and many others there too. In these camps, prisoners were forced to do hard work, were treated very badly, and many died. In Nazi Germany, being different from the Nazi idea of a good German was extremely dangerous. If you belonged to one of these unwelcome groups, you could lose your job, your home, your freedom, and even your life. 7. The war changes things. When the Second World War started in 1939, life in Germany changed completely. The normal routines Walter, Greta, Hans, and Emma knew were finished. Daily life became very difficult for everyone. Food became scarce. People received special paper cards, called ration cards, to buy essential things like bread, meat, butter, and sugar. But having a card did not mean you could get the food. People often stood in long lines or queues outside shops hoping to buy something. Often the shops had nothing left. Clothes and fuel for heating homes were also rationed. Families felt cold in winter and clothes became old and worn out. Finding enough food and staying warm was a constant struggle. The war also brought danger from the sky. Enemy planes began bombing German cities regularly. Loud sirens warned people when an attack was coming. Everyone had to hurry to air raid shelters. These were often cold, damp basements or special underground bunkers. Families huddled together in the dark, listening to the frightening sounds of bombs falling nearby. The fear during these raids was terrible, especially for children. Many nights were spent sleepless in the shelters. At night, cities were put under blackout rules. All lights in homes and streets had to be turned off or covered. This was done to make it harder for enemy bombers to find their targets. But the total darkness made moving around very dangerous. People could easily trip and fall. The streets felt empty and scary. With so many men away fighting as soldiers, women had to take their places in jobs. Women like Greta might have worked in factories making weapons, driven buses, or done other jobs that were important for the war. They worked hard to keep the country running and to support their families. Families with men at the front lived in constant fear. They worried every day about their husbands, fathers, and sons fighting far away. Waiting for letters was stressful. Receiving bad news was heartbreaking. The uncertainty was a heavy weight on people's minds. The Nazi government still controlled all information. Listening to radio news from enemy countries like the BBC in Britain was strictly forbidden. The government called them enemy transmitters. People caught listening faced severe punishment, maybe even prison. Despite the danger, some people risked listening secretly in their homes, desperate to hear news not controlled by the Nazis. As the war went on for years, life grew harder and more frightening. There was less of everything, more destruction from bombs, and the fear never went away. The war truly changed daily life, bringing hardship and constant worry to ordinary German families. 8. The end and after. The last months of the war were very hard for people in Germany. Life became terrible and full of fear. Bombs fell on cities day and night, turning homes into mountains of broken stone. Many beautiful old buildings were gone forever. People ran to dark, crowded shelters underground, but it was still very dangerous. Food was extremely hard to find. Ration cards did not mean you could get bread or potatoes. Often the shops were completely empty. People were hungry, thin, and cold. Heating fuel was scarce, even in winter. Families worried constantly about soldiers fighting far away. Many soldiers did not come home, leaving families sad and broken. Many people lost their homes in the bombing. They became refugees, moving from place to place, looking for safety and food. They carried only small bags with their few things. Roads were full of tired people walking, trying to escape the fighting armies. The Nazi government became desperate. Even old men and young boys, some only 14 years old, had to fight. This group was called the Volkssturm, the People's Storm. They had few proper weapons and little training. They were sent to fight against strong enemy soldiers, often dying quickly. It was a very desperate time. Listening to enemy radio, like the BBC, was still very dangerous, but some people risked it to hear real news about the war. In the spring of 1945, the war in Europe finally ended. Germany lost. Adolf Hitler was dead and the Nazi government was finished. The 12 years of Nazi rule were over. But the end of the fighting did not mean the end of problems. Germany was a country destroyed. Cities were in ruins. Transport like trains and roads was broken. Millions of people were dead. Millions more had lost everything and did not know what the future would bring. Slowly, the world learned the full, terrible truth about the Nazis. Allied soldiers found the concentration camps like Dachau and others. They saw the awful things that happened there. The horror of the Holocaust, the Nazi plan to kill millions of Jewish people, Roma, and others they hated, became clear to everyone. People understood how much suffering the Nazi ideas had caused. People like Walter, Greta, Hans, and Emma had to live through this dark time. They had to rebuild their country and their own lives from nothing. It was a huge task. Germany was soon divided into East and West, and life stayed difficult for many, many years. Daily life under the Nazis showed how fear, powerful propaganda, and hateful ideas could completely change everything in a normal country. People faced hard choices every day. It is very important to remember what happened, so it does not happen again. How do you think you would have reacted living in Walter and Greta's situation?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.